Welcome to Secrets of Social Impact Communicators, the podcast where we explore how nonprofit leaders can breathe, lead, and grow. I'm your host, Nate Burt, founder of Silver Maple Strategies. Thank you for being here. First of all, today's conversation is one I am super excited about. So full disclosure, Extension Foundation is a longtime client of Silver Maple Strategies, and I have thoroughly enjoyed working with the leaders at that organization over the years. So I'll say that up front. And look, stick around. The insights you're going to glean today from Beverly, who is CEO of Extension Foundation, are fantastic. Whether you work at a local community nonprofit, whether you're leading a national organization, or somewhere in between, you're going to hear about how to really adapt your strategy to meet the needs of changing times, right? How to show up as your best self against a backdrop of a lot of negativity, frankly, no matter what issue you pick, no matter which side of the aisle you're on. Look, we're surrounded by negativity. I think that's true both here in the United States and around the world. And for nonprofit leaders, that can be especially discouraging. It's one of the reasons we focus so much on one of the three core pillars of how we define nonprofit resilience, which is morale. And so today you're going to hear about all three of those pillars that we often talk about on this podcast: morale, clarity, and flexibility. So I am really looking forward to helping you think through strategies for having a plan, but not relying too heavily on the plan. Bev is going to talk about thinking or how plans and programs and nonprofit work can evolve organically and how to take advantage of that and plan for that and support a team in moving toward the horizon and a better future for the clients that you serve. So it's really exciting, a lot of great insight. I think you're going to be very energized by the time you get to the end of the episode. I also want to point out that if you haven't already gone to silvermaplestrategies.com and taken our free nonprofit resilience quiz, please do that. If for no other reason, then you're going to get a customized score, a roadmap for some recommended actions you can take right away. And of course, if you feel like, hey, this is something I want to talk through about maybe some opportunity or challenge my nonprofit is facing, I would love to visit with you further about that. You have that option as well, but there's zero obligation. It's completely free. So again, go to silvermaplestrategies.com, check out the nonprofit resilience quiz, and you'll get that free report in your email inbox. All right. Without further ado, please help me welcome Bev Coberly, CEO of Extension Foundation. Take a listen. Well, welcome back to Secrets of Social Impact Communicators. I'm Nate Burt, and so happy to have with me today both a colleague, a client, and also someone who's doing very important leadership work for communities across the United States, and that is Beverly Coberly. She is CEO of Extension Foundation. Bev, thanks so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Nate. I'm happy to be here. Happy to have this discussion.
Well, I wonder, Bev, if you could start a little bit talking about yourself and your professional path to Extension Foundation. And for audience members who don't have a clear sense of Cooperative Extension or what the foundation does, maybe give them a little bit of perspective.
Okay. I will start out telling a little bit about myself. Part of it is you have to know I came from a dairy farm in the middle of the Ozarks in Missouri. So that's my foundational work is I came from a dairy farm, and my dad was a bivocational minister. I went to a place called College of the Ozarks and worked my way through school for my undergraduate. And then I ended up getting 2 graduate degrees from the University of Missouri, the Great Land Grant in the state of Missouri. I would consider myself a lifelong learner because I did a master's degree, but I did the core of 2 other master's degrees because I needed that information to share when I was working in the Cooperative Extension Service. And so I keep moving things and getting certifications and things because I think as a CEO of a foundation or as a leader, my learning must continue on as well as everyone else's. So to talk a little bit about cooperative extension, for those that might be listening that aren't aware, that cooperative extension is a part of the land grant system. And what that means is many, many years ago, you could only get a university education by going to Harvard, Yale, some of the big schools. It was all academically oriented. And the land grant things that occurred in the late 1800s and 1900s, they made education available to the common man through the land grant system. The land grant system at the college level, there's at least one in each state, and there's some that are historically Black colleges, the 1890s, and there's some that are 1994s that are Native American college orientations. But the point of it is the education that goes there, the extension is a part of land grant, and it's funded by federal out of USDA. It's funded at the state level for higher education, and it's funded at the local level, which then many times provides for local faculty or staff or local offices. So then the question is, why is that important? Why would somebody work with extension? We're most known for having basically an agriculture and 4-H and family. Those are the most pronounced areas of the historical piece of what cooperative extension has done over the years. And we made a big difference in agriculture and feeding America in the 40s and 50s when we moved from a more agrarian approach to larger farms and to bigger productions and using more research in agriculture. And the same has been true with families and 4-H. We've learned more and more ways of how to help develop people, improve people, and have people have happy lives by helping them to have education. So my career path in extension started out as a field specialist. I was in Missouri Extension. I was a regional director in Missouri. I ended up at the state level. In 2016, I retired from the University of Missouri, but my passion for extension hadn't stopped. So I found an opportunity to work with the Extension Foundation. I came in as their COO, and I became the CEO in the end of 2023. And what I love about all of this is extension and the foundation. What the foundation is, it helps extension to be visible and successful at the local level. It's all about listening to the community, to what their needs are, and finding good information, research. We call it research-based information, but it's basically non-biased information which to share with people so they can take and use it however they want to improve their lives. And I just think that's great. I love that mission.
That's amazing, Bev. I love that background. I love the fact that we are fellow Mizzou grads and just hearing about how you're taking research-based information, add them to the field, to local communities. And obviously, we'll talk in a little bit about how the role of extension has adapted and evolved over the years. I'm curious for yourself personally, Bev, you obviously invested in your education, your role as a leader. How did you first know you wanted to pursue this kind of purpose-driven work, and what excites you about getting to do that every day?
I'll go back to who I am and my roots. I grew up on a dairy farm, so that's all about stewardship of resources and animals and things to feed your family, to be in a farming community. And my dad was a bivocational minister. So that shaped 2 or 3 sets of my values in ways that are at my core. So when I first began to work for Extension, quite frankly, working for Extension came easily for me. I had the education, but connecting with audiences and going out and offering programs that they needed or they wanted or to help them to do things came really easy for me. And I couldn't figure it out for the longest time. Then I took a leadership class. It was a North Central. It's called North Central. It's one of the regions of Extension. They had a leadership class, and I had to write my personal mission statement. And I realized at that time that my personal mission aligned perfectly with Extension's mission. And it's, in so many words, to be a servant leader or to work with people or to care about humanity or the resources that humanity has to make people's lives better or easier. So I learned early that I had that great connection. So whether it's family, individuals, or communities, back when I worked in the county, we did a lot of community leadership. Communities sometimes just need a little understanding that what they have is great and they can work on their own resources. So helping people to understand the resources and the assets that they have was real important to helping communities grow or helping families grow or helping agriculture across the country. So
Yeah, I love that. And I love your sort of the exercise of that personal mission statement, helping you get clarity on the fact that your personal values were so aligned with those of Extension. Bev, you've done a great job sort of articulating how Extension takes research-based information and insights from land-grant universities and bringing that to communities across the country of all different backgrounds. I'm curious for your sort of assessment of what makes that model so uniquely powerful and why you think it's more relevant today than ever before.
I think the extension system, and my experiences with the great University of Missouri land grant system here, that's where my field experience was at.
Yes.
Extension is close to the people. Extension's not somebody that comes in and says, hey, here, you need to know this. Extension is coming in and says, let's work together. Let's work with it, what you have to deal with and the information education that we have, and let's work together and come up with solutions to solve problems. So extension is close to the people. And that's when I said earlier that extension has a local piece to it and the funding of it that puts it into local communities. That makes us different than most all other kinds of people. We're not a straight line federal agency. We're three ways funded: state, federal, and local. And so the local puts us in that position to be local. And what happens is if you are an extension specialist, in Missouri, we're called specialists. Sometimes some states call them agents. They call, different kinds of titles for that, is we become a trusted resource in the community. And that trust and that closeness to the people then allows a lot of different kinds of education to occur, some formal, some informal.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense. And speaking of sort of formal versus informal education, Bev, I know you've spent time throughout your career at various levels of the extension system: county, campus, state, and now with the foundation, sort of seeing over things from a national capacity building standpoint for the extension system. And certainly for the nonprofit leaders who are listening to this podcast, many of them have various stakeholders, right? They have their local community, they may have a board of directors, they have their team they work with, and then they have the clients and the constituents they serve. And so as someone who wears many hats yourself, I'm curious about how working at those various levels throughout your career has informed how you approach leadership.
Several things will come into discussion here. One of them was when I was at the local level, I had an opportunity to work with extension councils. Extension councils, and sometimes they're called advisory groups or different things across the country. But it's that local group that is the sounding board and the leadership for the cooperative extension program in that county. And getting to work with the county councils, all kinds of people came in from the county, but what we were able to do is sometimes you can't use a resource if you don't understand it. So we would train them and get them acquainted with the University of Missouri and the resources they had, the resources that might come to play in their county. So the first thing is when you work with stakeholders, you have to have a relationship with them. And you also have to make sure they understand what you have to offer, what you have to do. Even at this national level now, we have an Extension Foundation board, and we continue to learn and grow together because there are people from all over the country that serve the foundation who come with different skills and capacities. And so we have to learn how to be a good nonprofit board member, just like we did at the state and the regional and the local level in Missouri as we did it. I think that people are happy to be a part of something if they understand it, and they will contribute very well if they understand what it's all about. And sometimes I think we forget that system part of working with stakeholders. We just bring them in and we want them to help us, but we don't take the time to help them understand the system they're working in because they may or may not have had experience with it before. So I think that all of those things that have helped me to be a better leader. The other thing is learning how to take an educational program and mold it to fit the needs of your audience. Universities do research, they develop programs, they do things, and you can take a lot of things objectively to the local level, but you have to figure out how to teach and train your audience, how to educate in your audiences. And that learning of those different audiences, that I'm very grateful the opportunities I've had. I was able to learn how to work with audiences in the local environment in my home county, as well as several counties, as well as the state of Missouri, work with leaders across the state. And now I'm working with leaders across the country. The principles, I think, remain the same, but the scope is a little different.
Yeah, I love how you've described sort of the insights that you've gleaned, including the importance of molding educational programs to fit the needs of your audience, helping people understand how they fit in. I know as someone who served on a local extension council for a couple of terms, it's amazing what people will volunteer to do. Again, extension councils, as I understand them, are volunteers from a local community, right? Coming together to support the needs of the county. What do our community members need, whether that's business owners or families or educators? And it's a really powerful model. And I love hearing you sort of articulate how you've been able to learn and apply those learnings throughout your career. 2025 has been a challenge for nonprofits of all stripes for a variety of reasons. I'm curious, Bev, from where you sit working and serving extension professionals, what do you see as some of the biggest headwinds facing those professionals as we enter into or prepare for 2026? And how is Extension Foundation helping them navigate those challenges and look for the opportunities?
I think three keywords I would say that I see, this is just Beverly speaking, is that if you look at the national level, cooperative extension funding has been flat for a long time. Costs have gone up, so that immediately cuts into your capacity. At the state level, it's all varying kinds of things. It depends on what's been happening in each of the states. Some of the states are doing fairly well. Some are struggling a little bit. It's the funding. Same thing at the local level is funding is an issue all the way across because we're not a straight line agency. We don't just get money to do this work from USDA or anybody. It's an understanding of that we make a difference. And there's some rules along the way in each state about what the county might have to contribute to be a part of it or what the state does and how they work. But the whole thing is based on funding. Well, funding doesn't occur just because you need money. Funding occurs because you do something that's impactful. And so I think some of the headwinds we have is we are doing the work. Everything I can see when anything I've ever worked with extension, it's never been a question of did we do the work? Did we have the outcomes? Did we make a difference? The headwind is telling the story so that people understand what a value extension brings to the community at any of the levels that we have. It's that understanding the impact, those kinds of pieces to it. And the other thing is extension's not always real visible. And the reason it's not real visible, I've kind of worked with this my whole life, is typically as a professional, when I was in the local community, my orientation and training was kind of like, okay, you go in there and you work with them and you train them. And when it gets done, the community doesn't say, oh, Beverly did it. The community says, we did it. And so when you do that, you lose some of your identity and value. But if you insert too much of that, the community loses the ownership of what they're able to do or the individual. So it's a fine place to do that. But visibility to me is one of the headwinds, understanding and telling our story. I'll tell a little story. We have this program, it's called the Excite program, got real popular. It's immunization education, occurred during the pandemic. And one of the things we learned is Washington State has a unit that helped us understand each community likes to hear messages in different ways. And how should messages be tailored to the community needs? And how did that work? Because there were certain things we needed to get accomplished in this large grant from the CDC and NIFA, National Institute of Food and Agriculture. But yet we had to make sure that we could reach the people and get people interested. So this whole notion of understanding your audience, how to get messages to them, and how to help them understand your worth and value is important. And I think we in Extension, all of us, want to help and get the job done and make the goodness happen, but we forget to talk about it.
Yeah, those are such powerful insights, Bev. And I think that's true for anyone who's listening, right? I mean, a couple of things you said really stood out to me. One was, the challenge is often telling the story so people understand the value, right? It's not that the work didn't get done or that the impact wasn't delivered. On the contrary, extension and certainly nonprofits across the country have great stories, but so often, like you said, there's this fine line between letting your client be the hero of the day, right? Letting the community take ownership and also taking credit where credit is due, which can be a challenge. And the visibility piece, again, I think is so well said.
And Nate also is solving problems now. They're more wicked. They used to call them wicked problems a few years ago. They're more complex. So no one agency can really go in and solve the problem. It takes all of us. It takes all of the agencies in the community, many resources to help agriculture. I mean, it's just because the problems are complex. They're not as simple as they used to be. So that kind of adds to this notion of, well, who gets credit? And the bottom line is many agencies don't take credit because they want the community to have credit where it's due. But then we lose the visibility and the funding that's required to continue to keep the capacity in the field that was helpful to make that complex change.
Yeah, that's such a really interesting and powerful observation, Bev, that we do have, in some respects, unprecedented challenges or complex things that we're trying to solve. And you're right, it takes multiple organizations, multiple entities, and that can make things complicated when it comes down to reporting out, giving credit where credit's due, and also making sure that you're visible as an organization, as a nonprofit or academic institution. A couple of thoughts occur to me, and then we'll move on to the next question just to build up what you've shared. One would be, we talk with our clients here at Silver Maple Strategies about what we call the three pillars that underpin resilience leadership, which are morale, clarity, and flexibility. And so I think you've really hit on that clarity piece. It's so important, right? Understanding internally who you are and then being able to
Yeah.
articulate that to other stakeholders. Have you found that to be true?
Yes. Yes. And I love your whole three pieces that you shared because flexibility is key in the environment right now. Things change very rapidly and you've got to be flexible and your staff, you have to have people have to believe they can make a change. People, whether it's a nonprofit or whatever, I tell my team they're the dream team. I can't believe I get to work with such a talented group of people. And they are, but they have to feel valued to go on every day and to work in this complex set of things that people work in anymore because there's a lot of headwind in working in complex issues.
Oh, it's so true, Bev. And you're right. The discouragement, I think, is often the number one enemy of purpose-driven leaders, right? Because you work so hard. Some of these things take a lot of time and investment and hard work and creativity. And seeing the payoff, so to speak, can take time. And if you start to lose heart in the mission or you start to wonder whether you're going to see the impact, it can really be disheartening. So I love what you said about finding ways to elevate your team, really encourage them, and help them connect the dots between what they're doing every day and the impact that you're having.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Bev, you've overseen a period of significant growth, right? Extension Foundation has launched several national programs in partnership with other institutions and organizations, some of which you've already described here. What would you say is the core framework that guides how Extension is able to deliver impact at scale?
It's been a busy 3 or 4 years. I will say that it's been busy. It's been busy. But one of the things I think, you know this to be true, but I think you have to always focus on the mission and you've got to set that point on the horizon. This is where we're headed to. And that holds you there. But the path to the horizon isn't straight. The path to the horizon goes many different directions. You got to have that bearing. Now, for us in the foundation, what we needed to build systems and we needed to build processes because we were growing and we were growing in areas that we hadn't had a lot of experience in. And so when we grew, we had to develop policies and systems and processes, not to be stifling or engulf us, but to structurally hold us as we grew and were flexible and learned new things. One of the things I think that you talk about growth is one of the things that I've tried to do is I trust my staff. I try to give them the guidance I believe that's needed, but I also try to turn them loose so that their skills and capacities can be realized because they're the ones that's going to help us do our work. And I trust them to do it. And I offer guidance as needed. But I think the trust issue is real important when you're talking about working with different kinds of audiences over the place. This might not set well with some. We don't have a written strategic plan. We have a focus on the mission and we have strategic doing that we're doing and we have work that we do, tactical and strategic things. But my experience with strategic plans is they get written and they get put on shelves and people just measure against what's on the shelf. And the real things happen out in the doing. And that's where the give and take is. And that's where the growth occurs, is doing and learning with your clients what you can do next and do better.
That's so interesting, Bev. What you're saying is a breath of fresh air. So, I'll say a couple of things. Number one, obviously, I'm biased. Extension Foundation has been a longtime client, but you do have an awesome team. And I think one of the things that always impresses me about collaborating with your group is that you are flexible. You are on the front lines, seeing what's changing in the marketplace, in local communities, and being adaptive and responsive to that. And I do think, this is a nice segue to my next question, which is you're building capacity as an organization across several pillars. I'm not going to name all of them, but some of them that I'm aware of are building resilient communities, helping with workforce development, assisting with emerging technologies, and giving capacity building support with artificial intelligence and other kinds of tools that are coming online. And so my question is because things are changing so quickly, because, oftentimes the strategic plan isn't the answer, it's really developing the strategy in real time. How are you providing support across such diverse disciplines in a meaningful way?
This may not answer your question directly, but one of the things, because we are partnered with the land grant system, we expect the land grant system to come up with the content, the educational pieces. What we do is we wrap around that content and we help people to understand how to get to audiences, how to use AI, how to collaborate, how to work. We have something called the Impact Collaborative, which is really cool way to do program development so that as we work with projects and we diversify and we work, each project, each grant we has, one of our grants had like 70 or 80 sub-awards. So there were all different things that were working in different
Sure.
communities. And so the issue is, how do you work with that? And the issue is our staff, their skill set is what I call wraparound services. It's communications, marketing, technology, evaluation. I'm going to leave something out, but we have several of those kinds of things. Project management, we use the idea of catalysts to help projects to move forward. We do things that enhance the project. And what I want to say is these resources are typically available at land-grant universities, but they aren't necessarily applied to many projects. They're applied to colleges or larger units. And so the whole idea that you apply these things to projects puts a whole new verve into the content and a whole new way to partner with folks. So it helps us to connect the audience and the needs, and it helps us to do something uniquely different to support. What happens in the foundation is we work with a group called the Extension Committee on Policy, and they have national issue teams that are called program action teams. And so those program action teams identify national issues that need local impact or that could use local impact. So we listen to those and then we go seek funding for those issues, and then we put them back out to the land grant system. Not that they have to, but they can come compete, RFA, request for funds project. And what we do is then we support those projects as they go out because we want it to be successful. We want it to be meeting the needs of the people at the local level. One of the things we don't have as a tagline yet, but we've talked about is national issues and local impact.
I love that. And I think it's really powerful so often it's easy as an organization to get like sort of deep into the weeds of these are the programs or service offerings or issues we've always focused on. I like the idea of looking out on the landscape, understanding that the world is a dynamic place, but being able to take those issues and then make them locally relevant, I think is sort of where the secret sauce is buried.
I agree with you. And some of the things I didn't talk about is I talked about a lot of my academic stuff, but I've taken several nonprofit classes. I got a certificate in nonprofit leadership from Georgetown University. And a lot of things when you talk about nonprofits, that's what they want to do. They want to do, complete assessments and strategic plans, and those are important. We just do ours, I would say, on steroids. We don't do it as a classically trained person would do, but we still assess the situation and we move, but we move with more speed and action than if we were to do it, what I would call a more classic needs assessment needs. We do some of those things and we do them, but not in where it takes us a year or 6 months to plan something.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense, Bev, especially in a very rapidly changing world. We often talk to our clients about having a bias toward action, right? It's great to plan. It's great to have a strategy. It's great to make sure all of your ducks are in a row, so to speak. And at some point you have to take action or else you're going to be left behind and you're going to limit or mute the impact you could have had otherwise. So I'm excited to hear you sort of share that focus. You've built strong partnerships and you've talked about this, Bev, with everything from universities to federal agencies to local leaders. What does effective collaboration look like, and how do you keep such a broad network of stakeholders aligned?
Collaboration means everybody talks about what needs to be done, everybody helps to plan what needs to be done, and everybody does the work of what needs to get done. And this collaboration to me is if somebody doesn't do one of those things, then somebody else has to pick it up and it becomes somebody's job, not a collaboration or a partnership effort. So we try to make sure that we do that. Now, as I say that, when you're doing these things, is so many different kinds of people come to the table and they'll have different gifts and talents and skills and they'll have different needs. Just trying to manage that. But if you can keep the focus on what you're trying to get accomplished, those will usually line up. Now, we work with a lot of grants, of course. So that means that how do we keep abreast of all these things is we have MOUs, we have contracts, we have subawards, all of those kinds of things. And what that does is if you have an MOU or something that specifically says what your partner's going to do and what you're going to do. When you're working at the national level, you can talk about it, but 4 months down the road, somebody's going to forget something. So you have to write it down. So details become important. I don't like to get bogged down into the details, but the details are important when you're establishing national relationships with people, so people know what their role is and how to act and when and how they can do that. Because there will always be questions that come. I said we talked about complex issues. You can plan anything you want, but there'll always be changes. That complex issue will always take a twist or a turn. Personnel will take a twist or a turn. And so you have to have that foundation of agreements and understanding and the collaboration. But you have to start with the idea. If you start with the bureaucracy, you're dead. You got to start with the vision and the ideas that make people come alive and bring their best skills to the table. But once you get there, you have to find a way to give them a base to operate from. It's not a confining thing. I called it, it's kind of a structural thing, architectural thing. You got to have something to hang on to as you go through 2 or 3 years or 5 years of a grant or a partnership. So I think those are all components of what makes the long-term partnerships work.
Yes, I love that combination of leaning into people's skills and talent and also giving them an architecture for focus, for keeping their attention headed in the right direction. That's a fantastic approach. Bev, can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned earlier, some of the challenges or headwinds facing extension professionals, especially when it comes to telling the story, being visible. So what are you finding as it relates to communications that is actually working, whether in local communities or nationwide, to really bring the extension story to a broader audience?
That's a good question because I think that's a forever to do kind of thing, that communication, no matter how you communicate, you need to communicate more. So we're trying different kinds of things. Is one of the things that I think that Extension and a lot of folks have done over the years is we believe that we keep good metrics and data. And so we have big data sets and we can check off the boxes of all the numbers and all of the great things. And that is a part of the story. But you've got to have a story about why it makes a difference to somebody. Those numbers are great. They don't back off of them at all. But the question is why are those numbers important? What actually happened in somebody's life? And those stories are harder to tell. They're harder to get to. But they are the stories that make a difference in people understanding your role and your work. So I don't think I answered your question directly, but it's this whole notion of what happened as a result and how did people's lives change, and did our outcome, the result, match the why we did this? Did we do something different, or did we just do a lot of programs and didn't really make any change in anybody's life? So the challenge is finding those stories and recording those changes.
Find the stories, record the changes. That's a great, easy to follow framework. Bev, new technologies like artificial intelligence are creating opportunities and disruptions. How do you see tools like AI reshaping Extension's approach to outreach, education, and impact?
I think it changes a lot of things, particularly in access to information. If you use some of the AI tools, they will get you information. It may not be correct. It may be correct, but how you get access to a lot of information. One of the things we're working on here at the foundation is we call it Extension Bot, that basically it uses a database of already approved research-based information. So you know that you're going to get an answer based on research, not on sales or somebody's idea. It comes from a research-based information. So we're actively, that's growing across the country. I think one of the interesting things about AI, and it amazes me, I'm a novice in learning to use it, but our team that's working on it, it's amazing what you can find and how you can ask AI to help you. The main thing I wanted to talk about with AI is to make sure that one of the roles that Extension can play with this is AI is information, and whoever gets it has to be a critical thinker. So they know how to assess the information they've got. Does this make sense? Is this true? Is there some other way I should ask the question to make sure what I'm reading is truth-bearing or will serve me correct? And so this whole notion, I had an interesting conversation with a guy out of California today here in Kansas City. And we talked about the notion and the need for critical thinking, that our society really needs that, and they really need it alongside with AI, because the use of AI is going to change how you get information. But I think that's where Extension can help, is you get the information, they can help say, okay, we've got college hours, you've done a lot of studying. They can help with some of the critical thinking or critical assessment of the information that's gotten through the AI techniques. AI is here to stay. AI, I mean, it's not going away. So we have to embrace it and we have to figure out how to use it best in our everyday lives. But we want to make sure that we are understanding that it may or may not give us the best information. You need a trusted source to get your AI from.
Absolutely, Bev. And I think you're right. Like, there's never been a better time for, an organization like Extension, and more broadly for human judgment, for discernment, for understanding, like, what is the research-based nature of this claim, or is there even any research or evidence to support what's being said, especially when anyone anywhere can write virtually anything or record anything. It's
Yes.
going to, that sort of fact-checking role is going to be so important. So I love to hear you say that Extension can potentially play a role there and also leverage and benefit from the access to that information that this technology unlocks.
Yes. Yes.
Bev, what's one question about the Extension system or your work that maybe not many people are asking but should be?
That's a hard question. The question I would ask is, the cooperative extension is based on a traditional model that's been done for years. It works. I mean, it works. What's the next iteration of that model that we can make it work better? When we put people in communities, there's trusted information, trusted people, they do all these things. What is the next iteration of that model? And I ask myself here at the foundation, okay, we're doing this. What is it we need to do? What is it? When you do change, you can do it incrementally, or you can do it, really big. Do a lot of change and you have a lot of disruption. So I'm going to guess it's going to be more incremental. But what is that change that's needed to help people to desire the right information, to help get the right information to the right people? I have not read a recent study, but, do people still come together and try to make a difference in their community? Do we still have people who want to lead 4-H projects? Do we have people who can help lead in, whether volunteer paid, for cooking classes to help our fellow humans to learn how to have nutritious food in their families? I think all the elements are there. The question is this: what is the next iteration that makes a difference? Because society is changing right now, and how we get information and how we utilize it and how we support and what we do for one another is changing. So I don't know what the answer to that is. I just wonder what the next model will be. I don't think it'll be far from what it is, but I think it has to change for us to continue to be viable.
I love that question, Bev. And I think that applies to anyone who's listening, right? What is the next iteration of my organization, our operating structure, the impact that we're having to adapt to changing times and to the how people receive information, how people want to show up and help and volunteer, to your point earlier. I think, like you said, I think all the ingredients are there. And at the same time, sometimes, to raise a point you mentioned earlier, if people don't know there's an opportunity to show up and contribute, they often don't. And so how do we get the word out to them, right?
Right.
Bev, what's one thing you do to stay sane and in control, so to speak, while navigating the ups and downs of purpose-driven work?
I've always had a very busy work schedule. I think that's because I'm so committed to the mission. But now I have to tell you more, it's more personal. I live in the Ozarks, and I love the Ozarks. I love the beauty of the nature. I love the sound of being outside. I love the sound of birds and squirrels. So when it just gets really crazy, I go outside and I sit peacefully on my deck, or I take a walk. I do something that's quiet. I don't take headphones with me. I don't do anything with me. I'm in nature. I love to be. I think that's where I come from. I come from the earth, and that's where I like to be. And so that's one thing. We have 2 Labrador retrievers, our dogs. They're 7 years old, and something about having a pet to talk to, just to be with, it makes a difference. And the last thing is I want to say is I want to be connected to the whole and not just the parts, is I have always lived a faith-based life. And I think that that's one of the ingredients that helps keep me grounded and centered, are those 3 or 4 things, is being in nature, being around natural things, and keeping my faith-based as a center for me to rely on.
I love that. That's beautiful, Bev. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's interesting. I was talking with an extension professional, I think in California a week or 2 ago, And they were sharing a statistic. So you can fact check me if you're listening to this and I'm totally off base. But I think what they said was something like if you spend maybe 120 minutes, about 2 hours a week in nature every week, like it physically changes the way your brain, just it makes your brain function at a higher, better level, which I don't doubt from my own experience being in nature. There is something so restorative. So I loved all three of those items. And that one was top of mind for me recently.
Yeah. Thank you. I hadn't heard that study, but I like that.
I do too. Now I just got to go track it down and fact check it through Extension. Well, the next question I have for you, Bev, as we round out our interview today, I've got three left. The first is stories, as you've mentioned several times, really have the potential to change how people think and act in the world. I'm curious, either recently or throughout the course of your life, if there's a particular story that's really changed the way you think about your life and work.
I'll give two quick examples. One of the things I've learned that has to be is you have to be patient. And I'll just give this from when I was 18, I was in a very severe car accident and I was in the hospital 3.5 months and in braces for a year or so, all that stuff. But what it taught me was patience, because healing takes time, good things take time. And so as a leader, I try to figure, okay, I didn't go through that experience for nothing. So the question is what do I need to take from that? And so I try to take the notion of patience, that the idea that things will come and go and things won't always be the way you think they should be. But if you hang in there, it will take some place that you can be acceptable and like to go forward. So I think that's part of it. The other thing is, over the years, I used to read all the Covey books, all those leadership books. I've got all those books in my house, read them all. Use them a lot, used to use them a lot when I talked about leadership. But I think this year's been particularly interesting. And I haven't seen a book or a picture or a work of art that has really spoke to me. So I decided many things have happened in our country in the last 9 months that are unsettling whoever you are, whatever you believe, whatever you think. So I decided that rather than being influenced by a book, it was time for me to step up to be me. So I've taken the time to personally just make sure that I'm kind to people, that I'm exhibiting my values, who I want to be, whether it's at work or at home, that I work on that. And believe me, I am not perfect. But I'm just saying I took the time to think there's a lot of negative discourse in the world. I don't want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of positivity and moving to the future and helping the human condition improve. So I know that sounds probably maybe a little silly, but that's what I did. I didn't rely on a book this year or a picture like I've done in the past. I decided it was time for me to put all the things I've learned into myself and figure it out, because I have to practice it now, because the world's got too many negative things going on.
Yeah, I love that, Bev, but that's definitely not, I validate that is a valid way of showing up in the world. And I think it goes back to something you shared earlier, which is this idea of biasing toward action, right? We can learn and educate and train. And when the rubber meets the road, right, when things are really complex or hard or challenging, and like you said, the discourse is really often negative, no matter what issue you might be speaking about or what you might believe, just showing up and being a kind human being and treating others with the dignity they deserve. So it goes such a long way, I think, and it really stands out against the backdrop of all of that negativity. So I love that. And I love the be patient guidance, which is so powerful. Bev, when people look back on your life and leadership, what do you hope they say about your contributions?
I hope that they saw me as someone who valued other people, and that I believed in people, that they had good and they could contribute either to their family, themselves, the community, whatever. I would hope that that would be my personal goal. I wouldn't want people to think I was afraid to do things that we didn't know or were scared to take a risk. I'm not going to jump out there and, be the biggest risk taker. I'm going to take a calculated risk. But if I take that calculated risk, I want it to pay off in the good one. So I hope they'll see me as somebody who will step things forward, somebody who put the point on the horizon and tried to help people to find their way to the horizon. And you talked about earlier, action. That's a real thing for me is I want to get things done. I want to make movement. I like to sit around and talk about it for a little bit, but I want the action is the most important thing to get something done. One of the things that's comes up every once in a while is strategic plan or succession planning, all these plans. And I agree they're important and you should think about it, but I think things are more organic than that. I think things have a natural way, but you have to harness it and guide it and allow it to develop. Because I believe that if you get the right people and the right opportunities, that the right things will develop. It's not because I tell them to, it's because I've given them the opportunity to bring their best, and together we can make it the best, whatever that might be. So I hope that people feel like they could grow under my leadership and that they were valued while we did the work together.
I think that's beautifully said. And what you shared about things adapting organically reminded me of a quote that my business coach once shared with me. It's from William Hutchison Murray. And the quote in part goes, "Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans, that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too."
Love it.
Yeah,
Love
isn't
it.
that powerful? I've always found
Oh, that's great.
ever since Ed Gandia, my business coach, shared that with me, it's stuck in my mind as there is something as a Christian myself. And again, we don't talk about faith a lot on this podcast, but I think there are greater forces in the world, greater forces for good. And
Yes.
oftentimes it is maybe getting the plan in place, but then moving forward with the confidence that things are going to work as they should. And so
Yes.
love, just to reiterate sort of what you've shared.
Yes.
You know, Bev, this has been a wonderful interview. I'm so grateful for your time and the insights you've shared with our audience. Where can people go to learn more about Extension Foundation and follow you?
They can just go to the words extension.org. I'll just be real honest, Nate. I don't carry a huge social media presence because I want people to follow the work of the foundation. I put my energy into the foundation, not into my presence or my who I am. So you can follow me through the foundation. And if you want to get in contact with me there, you can do that through the foundation. I'd be happy to talk to anyone. I believe in cooperative extension. I believe in the Extension Foundation. I think there's so many opportunities ahead for us. It's just a matter of us collaborating, working together, and finding that future together. And but it's worth it. The future is worth it for us. I'm full of gratitude for the career I've had with University of Missouri Extension, with the Extension Foundation. Full of gratitude for that, and I'm thankful that I get to work with the team I get to work with, and on the issues and things that we get to do across this country. And I loved it when I was at the county level. I love it now at the national level.
Bev, thanks so much, and gratitude back to you and the Extension Foundation team. Thank you so much for your time today, and best wishes on your continued leadership within Extension.
Thank you, Nate. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
All right. Well, huge thanks to Beverly Coberly, CEO of Extension Foundation. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did having that conversation before this aired. Again, I think it's so powerful to think about many of the things that Bev shared. And one of the quotes that really stood out to me was, quote, "The path to the horizon isn't straight." How true is that? I found that so often, whether I was in the corporate world or working as a journalist before that, or leading my own company now, working with nonprofits. The path to the horizon is rarely straight, and yet the learning, the growth, as Bev shared earlier on the show, that happens at those moments of when you're lacking clarity, when you're uncertain, when you're trying to figure out what is the calculated risk I can take here. The path to the horizon isn't straight, but every day in your organization, whether you're a nonprofit leader or a for-profit company or working in academia, you're getting closer to the horizon. If you're still up and moving and breathing and able to think creatively and put a human-centered lens on what you do and treat others with dignity, you're getting closer to the horizon. So wherever you are, whatever you might be doing today, whatever challenges or troubles you're facing, just take to heart what Bev shared today and really look for opportunities to lead and grow in such a way that you can be proud of what you're doing. You can be proud of your team. You can be proud of the impact that you're having. Just let that soak in for a little bit. All right. If this episode got you thinking, I want to just encourage you once more to go check out the Nonprofit Resilience Quiz at silvermaplestrategies.com. I hope you can find value in there. I know we had a lot of fun building it. Huge thanks to Audrey Anderson, our marketing strategy partner who designed the quiz, and make sure that gets to the right place and the right people. And as always, thank you to Lee Williams for editing and producing this and all of our podcast episodes. Until next time, my name is Nate Burt, founder of Silver Maple Strategies. Thank you so much for listening today. And remember that social impact work is soul work. Lead like you live. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.